I was 42 when I realized I'd failed her, and it's been eating me alive ever since. My name's Jack Harper, born and raised in Chicago, a guy who thought he'd seen it all after 20 years as a professional bodyguard. I was good, too, 6'2", built like a linebacker, trained to spot threats before they even formed. I protected CEOs, celebrities, politicians, you name it. But none of that prepared me for Senator Richard Vance, or his daughter, Lila. Looking back, I should have known the job would break me. It wasn't the long hours or the constant vigilance. It was the moment I looked into Lila's eyes, saw her fear, and did nothing. I started working for Vance in 2022, right after I hit 40. He was a big deal, charismatic, powerful, the kind of guy who could sell you a dream while picking your pocket. My agency, Elite Security, loved him. Steady contracts, fat paychecks. I was proud to be his shadow, standing behind him at fundraisers, scanning crowds for trouble. But there was this gnawing feeling, even early on, that something was off. Vance had a way of smiling for cameras while his voice turned ice-cold with his family. His daughter, Lila, was 16, quiet, always shrinking into herself. I'd catch her watching me sometimes, like she was trying to say something without words. Here's the part I'm ashamed to admit. One night, after a gala, Lila pulled me aside. We were in the senator's mansion, just the two of us in a hallway. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Jack, I need help. He's not what he seems." I froze. I thought she was being dramatic, maybe rebelling against a strict dad. I'd seen kids like her before, right? So I told her, "Talk to your mom, kid. I'm just a help." Her face fell, and she nodded, like she'd expected me to let her down. That moment haunts me. I didn't know then what I know now, how bad it was, how real her fear was. I keep replaying it, wondering why I didn't listen. I'm not a hero. Never was. I was just a guy doing a job, chasing a paycheck, thinking I could stay neutral. But neutrality doesn't cut it when someone's begging you to see the truth. I ignored Lila's plea, and it cost her. It cost me, too. I'm not with the agency anymore. I'm alone, jumping at shadows, wondering if Vance's people are watching. I don't sleep much these days. The guilt's like a knife in my chest, twisting every time I think of her. I failed her, and I don't know how to live with that. I'm scared I'll never make it right. Looking back, those first months with Senator Vance felt like I'd hit the jackpot. I was 40, at the top of my game, and Elite Security had me on their A-list. The pay was insane, 6 figures for standing around looking tough, driving Vance to events, and keeping paparazzi at bay. I'd been a bodyguard since my 20s, starting with club bouncer gigs, then moving up to private security. By the time I got Vance's contract, I thought I knew the drill: stay sharp, stay quiet, get paid. It was a rhythm I could live by, and for a while it worked. I didn't question the cracks I saw in Vance's world. I told myself they weren't my problem. My days were routine. Mornings, I'd meet Vance at his DC townhouse, a place dripping with old money, marble floors, chandeliers, the works. I'd check his schedule, coordinate with his driver, and brief the team. Mariah Cole, my partner on the detail, was solid. She'd been in the game almost as long as me, always quick with a joke to cut the tension. We'd flank Vance at speeches or fundraisers, scanning for threats, overzealous fans, protesters, or worse. Nights were long, sometimes stretching past midnight, but the overtime checks made it worth it. I'd crash at my apartment, grab 5 hours of sleep, and do it again. Vance was a pro at playing the crowd. He'd shake hands, flash that $1,000,000 smile, and talk about family values, like he invented them. But offstage, he was different. I noticed it early, how he'd snap at his staff or ignore his wife, Ellen, when she tried to talk. Lila, his daughter, got it worse. She was always there, trailing behind him at events, dressed like a doll but silent. I'd see her fidgeting, eyes down, while Vance barely acknowledged her. Once, at a charity dinner, he grabbed her arm when she spilled her drink, hissing something I couldn't hear. Her face went blank, and I looked away. I told myself it was just parenting, not my place to judge. Mariah saw it too, but we didn't talk about it. "He's a prick, sure, but they all are," she said once, shrugging. I nodded, because that's what you do, you move on. My job was to protect Vance, not fix his family. Still, Lila's quietness stuck with me. She wasn't like other rich kids I'd guarded, all attitude and entitlement. She seemed scared. I pushed it down, focused on the work. The money was good, the job was steady, and I wasn't about to rock the boat. I thought I had it all under control. God, I was wrong. Here's what happened the night I saw the real Vance, and it's been burned into my brain ever since. It was a few months into the job, late spring 2022, at one of those endless DC galas. I was stationed near the ballroom exit, eyes on the crowd, when Vance slipped out with Lila. They headed to a side room, and I followed. Protocol, you know, stay close. The door was cracked, and I heard it before I saw it, Vance's voice, low and vicious, like a blade. You think you can embarrass me like that? You're nothing without me. Then a sound, a sharp slap. I froze, my hand on the doorframe. Through the crack, I saw Lila, her cheek red, tears streaming, but she didn't make a sound. She just stood there, small and still, while Vance loomed over her. I should have burst in. I should have grabbed her, gotten her out. But I didn't. My feet felt glued to the floor. My job was to protect Vance, not his kid, right? That's what I told myself in that split second. But it wasn't just a job. It was fear of losing everything I'd built, the money, the status. If I crossed Vance, a senator with connections deeper than I could imagine, I was done. So I stood there, silent, while Lila's eyes met mine through the door. She didn't beg or cry out. She just looked at me, like she knew I'd fail her again. Then Vance straightened up, smoothed his tie, and walked out, brushing past me like nothing happened. I let Lila slip back into the crowd alone. After that, I couldn't shake it. I kept seeing her face, that red mark, the way she didn't even flinch. I'd guarded guys who yelled, who cheated, who lied, but this was different. This was a kid, and I'd done nothing. I tried talking to Mariah the next day, testing the waters. You ever notice anything off with Vance and Lila? I asked, keeping it vague. She raised an eyebrow. Don't go looking for trouble, Jack. We're not social workers. Her tone was sharp, like I was crossing a line. Maybe I was. But that night kept replaying, and I started questioning everything. Was I really protecting anyone, or just enabling a monster? I pushed it down, told myself it was one bad moment, not my place. But deep down, I knew I'd crossed my own line, and the doubt started eating at me. I spent weeks after that night telling myself it wasn't as bad as it looked. That slap, Lila's red cheek, the way her eyes locked on mine, it haunted me, sure, but I kept thinking, maybe I misread it. Maybe it was a one-off, a bad day for Vance. Parents lose their temper, right? I'd seen worse in my line of work, clients screaming at their kids, throwing tantrums behind closed doors. I told myself this was just rich people drama, not my circus. But every time I saw Lila at an event, shrinking into herself, I felt this knot in my gut. I'd catch her glancing at me, like she was waiting for me to do something, and I'd look away. I was a coward, and I knew it. I tried bringing it up with Tom, my agency manager, about a week later. We were in his office, a sterile box with files stacked high. I didn't mention the slap outright, too risky. Instead, I said, Vance seems rough with Lila sometimes. You ever hear anything about that? Tom leaned back, gave me that look he used when I was being difficult. Jack, you're paid to watch his back, not play family counselor. Vance is a senator. He's got stress. Let it go. His tone was final, like I was some rookie stirring trouble. I pushed a little, said Lila seemed scared, but he cut me off. You want off the detail? Say so. Otherwise, do your job. I shut up. I needed the gig, the money. I wasn't about to tank my career over a hunch. Mariah was no help either. We were grabbing coffee between shifts, and I tried again, keeping it casual. Lila's off, don't you think? Like too quiet? Mariah rolled her eyes. She's a teenager, Jack. They're all weird. Stop overthinking. She changed the subject, talking about her new car, and I let it drop. But their dismissals made it worse. It was like I was the only one seeing it, and maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was blowing it out of proportion. But then I'd remember Lila's face, that silent plea, and the shame hit hard. I wasn't just failing her, I was failing myself. I'd always thought I had a line, a point where I'd stand up. Turns out I didn't. I kept showing up, standing behind Vance, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. And the guilt was starting to feel like a weight I couldn't shake. The signs were everywhere after that night, and I couldn't unsee them. It was like a fog lifted, and every glance at Lila screamed something was wrong. A month after the gala, we were at Vance's summer house in Virginia for a weekend retreat. I was on perimeter duty, checking the grounds, when I spotted Lila by the pool. She was in a long-sleeved shirt, odd for the heat, and when she reached for a glass, her sleeves slipped. There they were, bruises, dark and splotchy, circling her wrist like a bracelet. She yanked the sleeve down fast, but not before our eyes met. She didn't say a word, just turned away, her shoulders hunched. My stomach twisted. I knew what those marks meant, and it wasn't a clumsy accident. At a fundraiser a week later, Lila was quieter than ever. She barely spoke, just clung to the edges of the room, avoiding Vance. I watched him laugh with donors, all charm, while Lila flinched when he called her over. He grabbed her shoulder, too tight, and she went rigid. I was close enough to hear him mutter, "Smile, damn it," before he turned back to the crowd. Nobody else noticed. Why would they? He was Senator Vance, the family man. But I saw it, and it made my skin crawl. I kept thinking about that slap, her plea in the hallway months back. It wasn't a one-off. This was a pattern, and I was standing right in the middle of it, doing nothing. I tried to focus on the job, check exits, skin crowds, stay sharp, but my head was a mess. Every time I saw Lila's hollow eyes or a new bruise, guilt clawed at me. I'd lie awake at night, replaying her asking for help, my brush off. Why didn't I do something? I could have called someone, even anonymously. But who? Cops don't touch guys like Vance. And the agency? Tom had already shut me down. I thought about telling Mariah again, but after her last reaction, I didn't trust her to care. I was alone in this, and the stakes were climbing. If I spoke up, I'd lose my job, maybe worse. Vance had power, real power. People like him don't get touched without consequences. So I kept quiet, hating myself more each day, watching Lila fade while I stood guard for her monster. Here's the night everything broke, when I couldn't hide from the truth anymore. It was late 2022, a chilly November evening at Vance's DC townhouse. I was on night shift, stationed in the foyer, the house quiet except for the hum of the heater. Vance had been drinking, rare for him, but he'd had a rough day, some Senate vote gone sideways. I heard raised voices from upstairs, his and Lila's. Nothing new, I thought, just another argument. But then it escalated fast. A crash, like glass shattering, then Lila's scream, sharp and desperate. My heart slammed against my ribs. I bolted up the stairs, protocol be damned. I reached the second-floor hallway and saw them. Vance had Lila pinned against the wall, his hand on her throat, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. A broken lamp lay at their feet, ceramic shards everywhere. "You ungrateful little!" He was yelling, but I didn't hear the rest. I shouted, "Hey!" and lunged forward, grabbing his arm to pull him off. He spun on me, eyes wild, and shoved me back hard. I stumbled but caught myself. Lila slid to the floor, gasping, a cut on her cheek from the lamp. Blood mixing with tears. I froze for a second, my mind screaming to do something, but Vance was already straightening up, his face shifting to that cold, controlled mask. "Get out," he said, not to Lila, but to me. "You saw nothing." I should have fought him, called the cops, anything. But I just stood there, my hands shaking. Lila looked at me, her eyes begging, but I didn't move. Vance grabbed her arm, yanked her up, and dragged her toward her room. The door slammed shut. I heard her sob through the wood, and it gutted me. I'd failed her again, worse than before. I was supposed to protect people, but all I did was stand there while a kid bled. I went back downstairs, my legs like lead, and finished my shift like a robot. But inside, something snapped. I couldn't keep pretending this was just a job. I'd seen the monster, and I'd let him walk. The guilt was a tidal wave now, drowning me, and I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. But what could I do against someone like him? The morning after that night, I knew I was done. I couldn't keep standing behind Vance, pretending I didn't see Lila's blood on the floor. I called Tom at dawn, my voice shaking, and told him I was quitting. No notice, no explanation, just, "I'm out." He didn't ask why, just sighed like I was a headache he'd expected. "You're making a mistake, Jack," he said. "Vance won't like this." I hung up, packed my gear, and left my agency badge on the kitchen counter. 20 years in the game, gone in a day. I thought I'd feel free, but all I felt was dread, like I'd kicked a hornet's nest and was waiting for the sting. Vance's people didn't waste time. By noon, I got a call from a block number. A man's voice, calm but sharp, said, "You saw nothing, Harper. Keep it that way, or we'll find you." I didn't answer, just hung up, but my hands were sweating. I started noticing things: cars lingering outside my apartment, footsteps too close behind me at the store. Maybe I was paranoid, but Vance had the pull to make problems disappear, and I was a problem now. I stopped sleeping, kept a knife under my pillow, checked the locks 3 times a night. I was alone, and it hit me hard. I reached out to Mariah, hoping she'd have my back. We met at a diner, away from DC. I told her everything: the slap, the bruises, that night with the lamp. Her face stayed blank, like she was waiting for the punchline. "Jack, you're burning bridges," she said finally. "Vance is untouchable. You think you're helping Lila? You're just screwing yourself." She wouldn't meet my eyes, just stirred her coffee. I realized then she wasn't my friend, she was loyal to the paycheck. I left without finishing my burger. Tom was worse. I called him again, asking if he'd heard anything about Lila. He snapped, "You're off the detail. Drop it, or you'll regret it." He wasn't protecting me, he was protecting the agency's contract. I had no one left. My parents were gone, my old buddies from the job ghosted me. I was a loose end, and Vance's world didn't tolerate those. The guilt over Lila was bad, but the isolation was worse. I kept seeing her face, wondering if she was okay, knowing I'd failed her. I wanted to do something, but I was scared of Vance, of what he could do. I was nobody now, just a guy with a past and no future, waiting for the hammer to fall. 3 months after I quit, the nightmares started. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, seeing Lila's face, hearing her scream from that night with the lamp. Sleep became impossible, so I'd walk the streets at 3 a.m., jumping at every shadow. My savings were bleeding out, no job, no references, just a growing reputation as the guy who walked away from a golden contract. Word travels fast in security circles, and my name was poisoned now. I'd burned the bridge with elite, and smaller agencies wouldn't touch me. They didn't know the details, but they knew enough: Jack Harper couldn't be trusted to stay quiet. I tried drinking it away, sitting in dive bars until closing time, but the booze just made the guilt sharper. One night, stumbling home from Murphy's Tavern, I swear I saw the same black sedan from weeks before. It crept along the curb, windows tinted, engine purring like a predator. I ducked into an alley, hard hammering, and waited 20 minutes before moving. When I finally looked, it was gone. Maybe I was losing my mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Vance's reach was long, patient, waiting for me to slip up or speak out. The breaking point came when I saw Lila on the news. Vance was announcing his re-election campaign, all smiles and family values, with Lila standing beside him like a prop. She looked thinner, her smile forced, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. The camera lingered on her for maybe 5 seconds, but I saw everything: the way she flinched when he touched her shoulder, the hollow look in her eyes. She was worse, and I'd done nothing. I threw my beer bottle at the TV, watching it shatter like everything else in my life. I was a coward who'd abandoned a kid to save his own skin. That night, I made a decision that scared me more than Vance's threats. I was going to find a way to help Lila, consequences be damned. I didn't know how yet, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. The guilt was eating me alive, and maybe getting myself killed was better than dying slowly from shame. I started making plans, thinking about who I could trust, what I could do. It was a long shot, probably suicide, but at least I'd go down swinging instead of hiding in the dark like a beaten dog. Finding someone to listen was harder than I thought. I spent weeks reaching out to old contacts, journalists, even a private investigator I knew from a previous job. Most wouldn't return my calls. The few who did gave me the same line: "Vance is bulletproof, Jack. You've got no proof, no witnesses, just your word against the senators." One reporter, Sarah Chin from the Washington Herald, at least heard me out over coffee. She listened to everything: the slap, the bruises, that night with the lamp, but shook her head when I finished. "I believe you," she said, stirring her latte. "But believing isn't enough. I need evidence, documents, recordings, something concrete. Without that, it's just hearsay, and my editor won't touch it." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You know what happens to people who go after guys like Vance without bulletproof cases? They disappear from the conversation, sometimes literally. I've got a family, Jack. I can't stake my career on a hunch. I understood, but it still felt like another door slamming shut. Everyone was scared of Vance, and I was running out of options. I tried a different approach: Child Protective Services. I called their hotline, stayed anonymous, reported what I'd seen. The caseworker was professional but skeptical. Senator Vance? She repeated like I'd said the president. Sir, we need substantial evidence to investigate someone of his stature. Allegations alone won't open a case. I pressed, describing the bruises, the violence, but she kept asking for proof I didn't have. Photos, medical records, witness statements. Without corroboration, there's nothing we can do, she said finally. Another dead end. The isolation was crushing. I'd walk around DC, seeing Vance's face on campaign posters, that fake smile mocking me from every corner. Meanwhile, I was barely scraping by, waiting tables at a diner in Alexandria, lying about my background to get the job. My landlord was breathing down my neck about late rent, and I was one step from sleeping in my car. But the worst part was knowing Lila was still trapped while I was free to fail her from the outside. I'd saved myself and left her in hell. The shame was a constant weight, pressing down until I could barely breathe. I needed a miracle, or at least someone with the guts to stand up to a monster. The miracle came from an unexpected place. I was working a double shift at the diner, pouring coffee for truckers and insomniacs, when a woman in her 50s walked in. She was well-dressed but tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying secrets. She ordered pie and coffee, sat in the corner booth, and kept glancing at me like she recognized me. After an hour, she approached the counter. "You're Jack Harper," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. My blood went cold. Was she one of Vance's people? But her next words changed everything. "I'm Ellen Vance. Richard's wife. Lila's mother." I nearly dropped the coffee pot. Ellen Vance, the senator's perfect political wife, was sitting in my dingy diner at 2 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept in months. "We need to talk," she said, and something in her voice told me my nightmare was about to get a lot more complicated. We met the next night at a motel outside the city, away from prying eyes. Ellen looked different without her political makeup, older, fragile, but determined. She got straight to the point. "I know what Richard does to Lila," she said, her voice breaking. "I've known for years, and I've been too scared to stop it. But I can't watch anymore. She tried to kill herself last month." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Lila, that quiet, scared kid, had been pushed so far she tried to end it. Ellen showed me photos on her phone, Lila in a hospital bed, wrists bandaged, looking even smaller than I remembered. "He told everyone it was an accident," Ellen continued, tears streaming. "A kitchen knife slip while cooking. The hospital bought it, the media bought it, everyone bought it. But I found her note. She can't take the pain anymore, Jack. Neither can I." Ellen had been planning her escape for months, gathering evidence, secret recordings, photos of Lila's injuries. But she needed help, someone who'd seen the truth firsthand. "You were there that night with the lamp," she said. "You saw what he is. Will you help me stop him?" I stared at this broken woman who'd lived with a monster for years, protecting herself while her daughter suffered. Part of me wanted to hate her for not acting sooner, but I saw myself in her, the fear, the paralysis, the desperate need to finally do something right. "What do you need?" I asked, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than shame. It was purpose, dangerous and terrifying, but real. Ellen smiled through her tears. "I need you to help me get Lila somewhere safe. Then we're going to destroy him." I nodded, knowing I was signing up for a war I might not survive, but finally ready to fight. The plan was simple but dangerous. Ellen had been documenting Richard's abuse for months. Hidden cameras, audio recordings, photos of Lila's injuries. She'd squirreled away evidence in a safety deposit box under a false name, waiting for the right moment. That moment was now. Lila was 18 in 2 weeks, legally an adult, but Ellen feared Richard would never let her go. "He sees her as property," Ellen whispered during one of our midnight meetings. "The moment she tries to leave, he'll destroy her." We had one shot. There was a charity gala coming up, Richard's biggest fundraiser of the year. He'd be busy, distracted, basking in the spotlight while donors threw money at his re-election campaign. Ellen would slip Lila a sedative, not to hurt her, but to make it look like another, medical episode, if anyone questioned her absence. While Richard was glad handing donors, I'd get Lila out through the service entrance, away to a safe house Ellen had arranged through a women's shelter network. It was risky as hell, but it was our only window. The night of the gala, I felt like I was walking into my own execution. I'd borrowed a waiter's uniform from Ellen, who'd bribed someone on the catering staff. My hands shook as I served champagne to the same crowd I'd once protected, scanning for security, mapping escape routes. Richard was in his element, that charming smile never wavering, while Ellen played the perfect political wife. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept checking her watch. Lila was upstairs, supposedly resting after feeling unwell, our cover story. At 10:47 p.m., Ellen gave me the signal, touching her earring. I slipped away from the kitchen, took the service elevator to the third floor, and found Lila's room. She was awake but groggy from the sedative, confused but not fighting when I helped her up. "Jack?" she whispered, and I saw a flicker of the scared kid who'd begged me for help years ago. "Your mom sent me," I said softly. "We're getting you out." She nodded, leaning on me as we made our way to the stairwell. Every step felt like a mile, every shadow could hide security, but we made it to the service exit. A car was waiting, Ellen's friend from the shelter, a woman who'd helped dozens of abuse victims disappear. As Lila climbed into the back seat, she looked back at me. "Thank you," she said, and for the first time in years, I felt like I'd done something right. Now came the hard part, making sure Richard Vance paid for what he'd done.